So I suppose that David Wick at the Lake George Park Commission can keep on flushing Lake George. The big wintertime lake drawdown is lake flushing, David Wick. You can try to wiggle out and make up a pile of bullshit all you want, but the wintertime drawdown, David Wick, Lake George Park Commission, is lake flushing. Now, the reason you're flushing the lake, David Wick, is all those septic systems around the lake are creating huge brownfields. They're saturating the soils with human bodily waste, and it's leaking into Lake George. That's why the lake's turning green. You stupid moron. You dishonest liar. Mr. David Wick, you're flushing the lake. You've been flushing Lake George for decades to dilute the pollution, to dilute the leachate that's leaching into the lake, the human sewage that's leaching into Lake George. The last time I was up at Lake George, David Wick, I drove across the east side there, right past your offices, and it smelled like a sewage. It smelled like a septic field. It was raining and the water was saturating the soils in the lake basin, and all of that sewage in the brownfields, the septic leach fields, David Wick, all of that drains into Lake George. And that's why the Department of Environmental Conservation, the Environmental Protection Agency, the United States Army Corps of Engineers, and everybody with half a brain realizes that the great big wintertime drawdown of Lake George is flushing the lake like a big old commode. And now you got this coronavirus and all the other viruses, David Wick. Why don't you explain how wintertime drawdown is not flushing the lake? Explain that to all your loyal fans. Explain that to the people of New York, and explain it to all the millions of people that get lured and baited to come up and swim in the Lake Leachate, Lake George. And they're flushing it down the Poop Chute River to Champlain, David Wick. Explain to everybody why Lake Champlain is so filthy, rotten, green, and polluted, David Wick. And Basil Sagos, Andy Cuomo, let's discuss this on national television. You Pinocchio bimbos don't have the testicles. You don't have the balls. Because when you let all that water out of Lake George in the wintertime drawdown, you're flushing the lake. Just that simple, David Wick. Facts are very stubborn things, Mr. Wick. And the Lake George Park Commission, who is it that finances you? Who are your lawyers? What exactly is your corporate structure? Who are the puppeteers, the puppet masters that are pulling the strings on the good old Lake George Park Commission? And why did they destroy the Witham Marina year after year after year with the up and down, up and down, up and down lake flushing of Lake George, Mr. David Wick? You see, Mr. Wick, I remember when the governor freaked out over a gallon of gasoline. Remember Governor Cuomo wanted to fire you because you spilled a gallon of gasoline in Lake George? How many gallons of sewage get dumped into Lake George every year? And how many gallons of groundwater and runoff from the brownfields, the septic fields, the big saturated septic tank leach fields, how many gallons of that septic leachate leak into Lake George every year, David Wick? Let's get Governor Cuomo and Basil Sagos to explain that one. And then we'll talk about the up and down, up and down, up and down flushings of Lake George. All the information you need to make an intelligent, informed opinion of this video are listed below. And David Wick, you're flushing the lake. You're the lake flusher, David Wick, and you can lie about it all you want to, but you're caught lying, Mr. Wick. Have a nice day.